right, welcome back to the You're Not My Father podcast. I am Thomas Greenman, and with me I've got a very special guest of mine, a good friend of mine from Tennessee, the amazing Travis Hare, and at least I said his name right. If you need it spelled out for you, I'll spell it out for you. So welcome to the show, Travis. I've wanted you on the show for a while. I'm super glad that you're here.
I'm very, very, very blessed to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So for those who don't know who Travis is, which I find incredulous that you don't know who Travis is, him and I met in a trade industry event show that we were both a member of, that association, and we hit it off really, really well. And we've got a lot in common. Travis is very opinionated in a very good way. He's very level-headed. He's an amazing all-around guy. And he doesn't have any kids of his own, not yet, but he has an incredible deep well of knowledge and advice. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have him on the show and ask him some questions and see what advice he has for us. So welcome to the show, Travis. Let me just kind of kick off with some standard interview questions to kind of break the ice a little bit.
Sure.
So some of these are just really softball type questions. You know, you've listened to this podcast before. You know, it's going to get completely derailed pretty quick.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we'll just go off into whatever. So this is just one of those like throwaway questions, but really an important question. How important do you think having a father in your life is to you, Travis Hare? What do you think the importance of having a father in your life is?
My father's my best friend. He was the best man in my wedding. I don't know what my life would be like had he not been in it. It's just it's something that, you know, it shapes who you are. Your father, good, bad, whatever. It's part of the hands that mold the clay.
Yeah. Is he still molding the clay? Is he still with us?
Yeah, he is. So my father is one of the, he outlived his brother by, I guess 20 years at this point, over 20 years. He outlived his father by close to 25 years. And my father was diagnosed with cancer in 2006, 2005, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and had tons of chemo and was very, very sick for a long time. And he still battles skin cancer, where he has to have multiple surgeries a year and things like that. And yeah, he's still with us. He's still doing great. He still drives. He's 76, almost 77. Still drives and gets around and does all of the things and runs around on the lawnmower. And he's wonderful. He's like it's the best thing to be able to have both of my parents and to be able to go visit them. And most of the time I get to work from there on Fridays because I work from home now, and we worked hybrid in my last job, and I was able to work on Fridays from their house. And even though most of the time they spend looking at the back of my head where I'm working, I get to have lunch with them. I get to have, quality time with them. Things I wouldn't trade for the world. And more about me. I came home from college basically with my tail between my legs. I thought that I had the world on a string, right? I thought I had everything figured out, and I didn't. And I came back home, and my mother just said, well, stay here and save your money. And when it's time, you can buy a house, you put a big down payment on a house. And that's exactly what I did. And I got a leg up from my parents that they never got, that basically nobody I know got, and was very fortunate. And it wasn't as though they had a ton to give me other than their love and support, and just it's a very different relationship. My parents were very much older when I was born, and I was sort of raised like an adult. I was a little old man.
It's like a free range kind of kid of some sort. Like you had a lot of independence and freedom.
That's right. And so when you're an only child, and I'm an only child, and my wife has all the siblings. I'm an only child, so like, my wife doesn't understand the game of throw a ball and then walk after it and go pick it up and then throw it the other direction. It's the, it's that. It's the being able to sort of entertain yourself, and I had a great childhood. It was different. It was different, but I would say, pretty much everybody's is their own unique experience. But I was really fortunate to be able to live with them for a long time. And when you live with your parents as an adult, you have a different appreciation, and you have a different relationship. It's not a parent-child as much. You get to sort of evolve with them, and you get some independence, and I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't do it a different way. I loved it. And when I get a chance to talk to people, I always tell them, like, if you have the opportunity, don't be in such a hurry to go get out on your own, because you know what? Like, you start getting bills and stuff when you get out on your own, and then you don't get to enjoy being around your parents as much. So
it's true. I'm curious, after all this discussion, here's a question. If you asked your wife, or if I asked your wife, who is Travis most like, his mother or his father? What do you think she would say?
So
because I'm really curious. I'm really curious. I'm not even sure if I could even guess, but I mean, it's 50-50.
I look most like my father. I have the temperament sometimes of my mother, which is a very short fuse, a very loud bang, and then it's over. Right? That's my mother is like she's like a bottle rocket. It doesn't take much to set it off, and it doesn't take a long time to cool it back down. Whereas my father is a much longer fuse and a much bigger explosion. But I'd like to think that I'm a really good mixture between the two. My father was an athlete. He was he was a 4-sport guy. I don't have an athletic bone in my body. No, but I get hurt playing sports. That's what I do. Like his brother was a fantastic baseball pitcher. My dad was a fantastic baseball player, played football, and they did all of these sports, and I never was like that at all. I wasn't like that. Nothing. I like sports, but I just wasn't any good at them. can remember a wrestling coach calling my mother when I was in 8th grade, and I wasn't going to make the team. And my mother picked up the phone, and Coach Reynolds had called my mother and said, "And what are Travis's grades like?" And she says, "Well, I don't think he's made a B in a couple of years or something like that." And he says, "Good, he should stick to that." So
Oh my God.
that was my claim to athletics. But other than that, it was just my father and I shared a lot of interests. You know, we bowled together. I know I grew up bowling, and that's what I did through high school, and then ultimately college, and then quite a bit after college as well. And that was one of those things that we shared together, that we could do together, that we really bonded over. But my mother will tell you,
whenever he would bowl with you, would he tell you stories and be like, "Travis, you need to do this," or
my father taught me how to bowl. My father, he was a great coach. He coached the high school kids, and even after I was gone, even after I wasn't on the team, he coached a couple more times actually. And he was never hard on me. And I never coached like that either. When I would teach people how to bowl, or when I would teach people how to do anything in life, it was never about like carrot and stick, right? Sometimes you get the carrot and sometimes you get the stick. It was always, no, here's how we're going to correct it. Here's how to fight through this mentally, et cetera, et cetera. And
so if you guys left the bowling alley and you got in the truck and you're driving home, what are you guys talking about? Are you talking about, bowling, or are you just talking about random stuff, or is he educating you on the finer points of love and life or something?
So this is where it's funny, is my father is, my father's completely deaf in one ear. His right ear has he's had several surgeries on it, and now there's no guts to his ear. He's got just a giant. It's just a big hole that's over here, and then he wears a hearing aid in the other ear. And even before he wore a hearing aid in it, he always needed one in it. So my father would be having any conversation in the world. It didn't matter what I wanted to talk about. It was whatever he was talking about, and then I could either join in or not join in, or it didn't matter, because I was on this side of him. There was no way he was going to hear me. Yeah. So I always say that about my father, and even to this day, like, it's very funny because it's whatever conversation he wants to have is the one that he's having. It doesn't really care what you want to talk about at all. And that's one of the beautiful things. Like my wife Kara says that she would love to have it just like a recording of us two kind of bantering back and forth, because I'm sorry. What I will do is I'll just fill in from whatever it is that he might be talking about. I will just fill it in with something else. It doesn't, because he doesn't care. He's not hearing anything. Whatever he thinks that you said is probably what
so he's just like nodding his head, and he's like,
yeah. He doesn't know. So he'll be talking about the Titans football or something like that, and I'll talk about something completely different, but I'll make sure to use a few key words like football or MVP or something like that, and then he'll just keep on with the conversation, and and it's not poking fun at somebody with a disability. Okay.
Right.
My father has had this disability my entire life. Like he tried to go into the service. My father lived through Vietnam. He tried to volunteer to go into the service and could not get accepted, even trying to cheat on the hearing test because he's never been able to hear out of that ear. It's just the parts just don't work. And so they eventually had to come out. The parts had to be removed from his head. So anyway, it's not making fun of somebody with a disability, but one of the things
you're enjoying life with him.
Yeah, one of the things about me that people notice right away is that, like, I will, if I'm talking to you, I'm like projecting at you and things like that. Like I'm speaking clearly and loudly at you.
Yeah.
And that's from growing up with him, because if you wanted to have an actual conversation with him, it wasn't just like, bantering back and forth about sports or whatever that was going on. You had to be very clear. You had to speak very loudly and really hit your syllables hard. So, again, in college, everybody always made fun of me because I would say TV instead of TV, things like that. So I would
wait a minute. Say it one more time. Let me catch that. TV. Okay, gotcha. Okay, it almost sounds like TV.
Right. Whatever you had, like whatever you were going to say, you needed to put all of the emphasis on the beginning of the word and not later on in the word, because that's how he was developing the speech patterns. So he reads lips extremely well. He can pay attention to you. But if you're across the room trying to yell at him, he has no idea what you're saying. And also, he doesn't have the ability to say, "What? I didn't quite catch that." Nope. It's just going to be whatever he thought it was. And it makes for some really interesting and fun experiences. And my dad and me, we are just we're so much alike in so many ways that, and we have a very similar sense of humor. It's a very sophomoric sense of humor. And, so like,
sophomoric, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. There's so many fart jokes and things like that going on in that house. It is, it's wonderful. I just have the best time with him. And I really feel like, just because of how young he was when he lost his father, how young his nephew was when he lost his father, so my dad's brother, that I've had him a lot longer than those people have. And I'm very grateful for that. So
if you could summarize or maybe just condense all the wisdom that your father has given you into like the best advice he ever gave you on a particular subject, it doesn't have to be super deep or meaningful, but is there something, like when you think of your dad and something that he's passed on to you from a knowledge perspective, like this one thing that just reoccurs in your mind, like even if it's something super benign, like son, always wash your hands after you go to McDonald's or something like that. I don't know. I mean, or is it super complex? But
No.
What's the thing that you think of on a regular basis or more often than not? Like, that's what Dad said. Like I learned this from Dad.
My dad told me that I would be extremely smart until I got interested in women, and that women would make me stupid. That's what he said. He said, women are going to make you stupid.
So in retrospect, do you think like he was absolutely right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, and I'm talking, I was little. I was a really little kid, like 3. And he's like, son, women are going to make you stupid. It's like you're gonna be wildly intelligent until you start chasing women, and then you're going to do the dumbest things in the world. And it's true, and like it's I suppose it's true for like heterosexual men, but when you become interested in love,
Yep.
you get you just turn stupid. It's the truth.
You do.
We all like what are the things that we've done as a result of love or seeking attention or whatever, hey, watch this. But
ultimately I feel like that's why God's plan for marriage is like to get the stupid out of you like as quickly as possible. Okay, you're in love, get married, and then it's like
yeah. So
okay.
I was very much older when I got married. When Karen and I got married, I was 37,
Mm-hmm.
and I always tell her, like, man, you would have hated me at like 22 years old. You would have hated me. I was so stupid. The things that mattered then have no bearing on my life, on my existence today, not at all. And it's some people would look back at that as time wasted, and I don't. I mean, that's experience. That's part of what makes you into the person that you are today.
You paid a heavy price for that wisdom, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Right. And you know what? If I have a son, I will probably tell him basically the same thing. Like this is it. But like, if there was one little nugget that I can pull out that was told to me almost daily, it was that. But no, like Dad and I used to we used to count by numbers when I was little bitty. We used to do all of these things that were important, that I have just the most wonderful memories of. But the amount of sage like wisdom that was passed on that I can like give a little blurb of, it was never that. Other than the what I just told you, it was more of this is how to be a man and how to take care of your family and how to be a provider and it was in how he did it. So he showed me how to do it instead of telling me how to do it. This is not like it's not. This is what you're supposed to do. It was. No, just do like me. Take care of your home, take care of your family, and everything else is way down here. It's on the scale of importance, and like nothing else is even close to doing those two things. And I say home, I mean proverbial home, like the people who live in your home are your home.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just a box, right?
Right. I tell my wife all the time.
Things.
I would say all the time. I tell her whenever we're arguing that I'm like, this doesn't mean anything to me. Like the house, the possessions, the only thing that really means anything to me besides Jesus Christ is her and the kids. That's it. I was like, it's like if I needed to just burn this whole place down or just get rid of it or walk away from it, I will be for them in a heartbeat. I mean, that's right. That's all that really matters. And maybe in some ways I'm hoping that she will understand that this is a trivial thing. Like whatever we're arguing about, I really don't care. It's not that I don't care, but it's like at the end of the day, it's about us. It's about the family. That's it. There's no, outside of Christ, there's no bigger reason for me to be here, So, I mean, it's
what's that 5 and 5 and 5 thing, right? Is it going to matter in 5 minutes and 5 days and 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
What is that? It's a trope. Like whenever you're really, really angry about something, or you feel disrespected or slighted or something like that, you just have to like step out of your body and look at yourself and say, is your behavior fixing this? And is it going to matter a year from now or even a month from now? How you acted may actually be more damaging than that. So
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, absolutely.
I get it. Like the only things that are important, yeah, we would all walk away from all of our possessions, and I'd love to have stuff and
Yeah.
my house and things like that. But the most important thing is the woman that's upstairs, which is my wife, and my relationship with Jesus, and my relationship with my folks, and that's what I have. That's what I actually own.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm getting close to 50 and I feel like I've heard the phrase like, he's forgotten more than some people know. And I'm like, I'm not saying that I know a whole lot more than other people, but sometimes I feel like I forget wisdom and I need somebody to remind me like, oh yeah, yeah, yes, this, it's,
Hmm.
I think it's the reason it's one of the more recent reasons why I like doing this podcast and I like being able to bring this content to people is, it's almost like having a large group of people that you can bounce ideas off of and kind of keep you in check. And I feel like your father, my father, everybody's father really needs to be that person for, like, I'm going to keep you in check. I'm going to love you. I'm going to support you. I'm always going to be there for you. But I also kind of need to be that teacher that reminds you of what you need to do and how you need to act and those types of things.
My father was not much of like the Southern trope father. I was never struck in anger, as a child, or as a young adult. Never. I never got a spanking. Never, nothing.
I think my
It
dad only
was a,
did it once,
it was a
just
big
once.
enough punishment that somebody was upset with me. Like it was mental anguish that somebody, like I
Yeah.
disappointed somebody. Um, and I think that's a different kind of that's a different kind of punishment, man. I would say that cuts deeper than any sort of whipping could, but um, it has to be the right. It has to be the right person. The right person. Like if you don't care
Yeah.
about anything, then maybe physical punishment is the only thing that you have. But like I never got a whipping. I was never afraid of my father coming home. I'll tell your dad. That was never a thing. And also, my father wasn't necessarily the disciplinarian of the house either. Um, my mother was. My mother was the disciplinarian, and it was just it was just different. It was like that sort of relationship, and maybe non-traditional gender roles,
Mm-hmm.
for them, like as far as parent relationship. But as I got as I got older, um, mom stayed mom.
Yeah.
Like my mom and my relationship stayed the same from birth till today. But my father's relationship and I like went from know, father to like he's best friend, confidant, and uh, just somebody that I can pick up the phone and tell the worst thing or the best thing, and he's going to share. Going to share my emotions. He's going to share everything that I'm feeling, and he's going to be able to talk to me about it, um, either through shared experience or through just empathy. And so, yeah, our relationship changed over the years, and whereas my mother's and I, like that's still my mama, and
Yeah.
I don't care how old I get, it's still my mama. That's and I don't know that that's not uncommon. I think that is maybe for people who grew up with both parents in the home. I think that's probably pretty common that people's relationship with their father goes from where maybe in their case the father was a disciplinarian, and then they go from that to when they get older that they're more of a have a man to man talk with your father kind of thing.
Speaking of man to man, like how was it whenever you first started dating? Like what was your dad like? All right, son, we're gonna have the talk and whatever. I mean, was it the stereotypical path to whatever, or did he have some kind of
No,
unique insight?
no, my father sat me down and said, "Well, I want to talk to you about sex, son." I said, "Okay, what you want to know?"
Oh my God. I should have known we were walking into that one.
Well, I want to teach you something. All right. No, the he um that was never hidden from me. Again, maybe again that's part of the my parents were 36, almost 37 when I was born, so I had a little bit older parents. They were from the Vietnam generation. Um, it it was I never experienced baby talk. I thought it was so strange when like I would hear people talk baby talk. To this day, it's really weird for me to hear people speak to their children in a different way than they would speak to like you and me having a conversation.
Yeah.
That was the way I was raised, and so it was like sex and nudity and those sorts of things. They were never hidden from me. I was never sheltered from something. I was pulled to the side. If I watched a scary movie, my my mom and dad would tell me the difference between reality and fiction, and that this is how this is made, and things like
Freddy
that.
Krueger
And
is not
then
real.
that's right. Yeah, nobody is going to come get you in your sleep tonight because you watched a silly movie. Think about how ridiculous that is. Did you think somebody was going to come get you in your sleep last night? The movie existed yesterday too. Like they're not coming just because you happen to watch the movie. Like think about this, and like I was taught to be rational at a very young age, and even when things like Santa Claus came up to be uh, something that I questioned from 4 or 5 years old. And my mother had the most wonderful answer about Santa Claus. And she would say, Santa Claus is love. And that's all she would leave it at. Like that's where she would leave it. I didn't
That's
understand
pretty
that
awesome.
until I was older, until I was much older, and I actually did understand what she meant by Santa Claus is love. Um, so she would talk about stories and things like that, and that these aren't necessarily meant to be bought into as fact. Like
Yeah.
these are are parables, or these are ways that they would get children to behave the rest of the year so that maybe they would get gifts at the holidays, things like that. Like those were things that weren't hidden from me by neither parent, and you know, they were. I was just always treated like I was able to make rational sense um, of life, and it's like I always say, I was the little old man, and I was the one who wanted to sit on the park bench. I wanted to sit on the bench at recess and watch the other kids play, and I had my sweater on, um, because I was cold. So
So
that was,
it makes me curious what your parents' upbringing was. You know, why they waited until later on to have you. You know, and like like kind of like their story. Just because it is interesting to me. I mean,
yeah,
I grew up in the South, and you know, my mother's from Pennsylvania, and my dad was. Yeah, he was all over the place in the military. His parents were in the military. He was in the military. And, you know, I didn't get any of that. Like, you know, I got that
yeah.
baby talk. I got all that stuff. So it just makes me curious, like, what was their origin?
So my my mother is the middle child of three. My father's the baby of three.
Mm-hmm.
Um, both both of them had the siblings had balloons.
Hey,
Um, so
awesome.
both of them had siblings that were that had children very young. So
Were they from the same area that you grew up in, or were they from
yes,
different parts of the
yes,
country? Okay. So they were
yes.
local.
So my father was born in Kentucky, but he was raised in Nashville. My mother was born in Nashville, raised in Nashville, and then I was born in Nashville as well. So, uh,
And
but
what did they do for a living?
my father was a route man. My father ran a bread route, had,
Mm-hmm.
bread delivery, and my mother built airplanes. So,
Really?
yeah, she worked for a company local to Nashville who had contracts with everybody from the government to Airbus. Um, they built C-130s in one part of the area, and then she wound up building the leading edge of an Airbus, and I probably should know the number, but Airbuses that are um, still being still being used, and
Nice.
she's been retired for a long time. But my aunt, who is a little bit older than my mother, so my parents grew up in the World War II generation, and um, so my aunt's a little bit older than my mother, but not much. My aunt is a great grandmother,
Mm.
and my mother, who's just a few years younger, is not even a grandmother.
Yeah.
Um, and she had children very young. My aunt had children very young. Her children had children very young, and their children had children very young. Um, actually, like to the point where they could have kids now. Like they're old enough to have kids now. She could be a great great grandmother.
Wow.
Um, so it they were married almost 13 years before I was born. Um, my my parents, I don't think it was for I don't think it was lack of trying or anything like that. It just wasn't in God's plan,
Yeah.
and I was I was definitely a surprise to them. My mother was, and this is it's the early 80s. So my mother was a geriatric parent. Um, and basically the women who were her age, who were in, having babies, they were having like their fifth or sixth kid by then.
Yeah.
And my mother will tell you, like, she just didn't know. She didn't know how to be a parent any other way. She didn't know about the baby talk, and she just didn't know to do all of that stuff, and was just, this is how she chose to do it. And dad the same way. It just was never done that way. Everything was also very prescriptive, which is still sort of the way that I live my life. Um, like my days were planned out exactly. Like, here's, you do this thing here, you do this thing there, you do this thing the next, and to this day, if I deviate from that schedule, it throws everything out of whack. And I can skip a shower in the morning, and the whole day is now blown. The whole day's a mess
Right.
because just everything was perfectly in line. They were already well into their careers, and they had they were older, and they had established routines. And then, I came along. And another thing about with me is, my parents never had a babysitter. I went everywhere. They went to the movies, I went to the movies. They went to eat, I went to eat. That's from baby on.
So it
And
sounds
I don't.
like they just incorporated you directly into their
Yep,
life. They didn't wrap their life around you. They were like, "All right, you're here, Travis.
that's right.
You're in our
That's
schedule."
exactly right. Yeah, yeah. I became part of their life, and it it was, yeah. It wasn't like I was an afterthought. I was the most important thing in the world to them. I was always treated as though it was, everything that was going on with me was the most important thing that they would do. And it just, it was very strange to me when because I didn't have a lot of interaction with other people, but it was strange to me when I would hear, like, parents having date nights and things like that, and not and leaving their kids, because I always just went.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that some of that's because I was an only child, and some of that's because of who my parents were and who I was. And um,
I definitely feel like with two kids, like you kind of need it because you've got four people living in a house or more, depending on how many kids. But
yeah,
like with one kid, it's like, okay, that's not a big, it's easy to make that kind of happen.
well,
I
I know
guess
it's
where I'm
like
going with that is like date night now is like when it was just one kid, I was like, no, that's no big deal. I'll take it. And now it's like, no, I will leave them at home. I want to,
mhm.
I need
Well,
some
it's
away
probably
time.
still too early to tell a Bill Cosby story, but Bill Cosby, he would say that if you had one kid, you're not really a parent, because
Yeah, I could see
if
that.
you go home and something's broken, you know exactly who did it. You
Right.
don't have to have the conversation about who broke it,
Yeah,
and
you go straight to
the battle.
judgment. You don't have to
That's
open up the
right.
courtroom and, you know,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah. Yeah.
present the
Yeah. Yeah.
evidence.
Uh huh. So that's the and I suppose that's a lot of how I was raised. And um so the differences in the two of them was, Dad worked from 2-3 o'clock in the morning And he would work super long days, but he was home usually around the same time that I would get out of school.
That's cool.
So we would do homework together. He was able to be involved in, extracurricular activities that I did. And he worked Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, and then he would work Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So he very seldom ever got 2 days off in a row. But because he was off on Wednesdays, he always volunteered at schools. He always volunteered for everything. He was always involved in my life and in everything that I did. He was always involved. And I can really only remember a little bit of time in my life where I was like embarrassed to be with my folks, or to be, oh, I don't know. Can you drop me off over here or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't think that I really went through that. If I did, it might have just been like for a hiccup. I never had that situation where I was embarrassed of my parents. I was always very proud of them and who they were and how hard they worked, and the life that they made for me and for each other, and the person that they were teaching me to be.
So you mentioned gender roles earlier. So with your dad being home more during the day and being able to do these school things with you, was he cooking dinner at night? Was he doing more of that type of stuff, or what was like the dynamic there? Like, did he do things that most people would be like, oh, well, that's a woman's job, or, what was that like?
No, man, that was never a thing. I can 100% tell you that my parents never said anything like, that's a woman's job or that's a man's job or whatever. But my mother would do laundry. My father, when he was getting off work earlier, especially later in his career, when he moved a little bit closer, his route was a little bit closer to home. As route men get more up in seniority, they can get routes that are closer to their house.
Yeah.
He was able to help make dinner and things like that, where it would take some stress off of mom. But mom did still make a lot of meals. She made breakfast every day. I still have breakfast every day. And we would have dinner as a family around the table every day.
So no TV.
TV would be on. TV would be on. TV would be in the same room.
Kind of more in the background, maybe.
Yeah, but it's more of like you might as well have had the radio on, or
it's like white noise or something.
That's right. Yeah. It was tradition, and it was something that, like, when Kara and I started to get more serious about dating, it was something that was very, very important to me. Like, no, we have dinner together, and we don't even have a TV in that room. We don't have a TV. No TV, no nothing. And sometimes we'll have a little bit of music on, but if we do, it's just like, ambient music. It's not we're listening to something or we're being distracted, and we actually sit and talk to each other. And that was always really important. But Dad would always be gone, and so I would have breakfast in the morning, and then we would have dinner together at night. But there's a lot of times that Dad would get home in the afternoon and he'd go sleep in the chair because he's already worked a whole day. And it's And it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's worked 12, 13, 14 hours with no break. Because route men are ultimately independent contractors. So if they take a break, that's money that they lost.
Yep.
They didn't have much of a lunch break or a lunch hour or anything like that. They were busy, very, very busy. And
so did he have the traditional lazy boy type of chair with the feet kicked out?
And I got to tell you, some of my favorite memories of him, we had this, it was like a bluish purple lazy boy. And my father would fall asleep in it. And my father slept in a very interesting way when he would sleep in the chair. He would actually sleep rubbing his nose like this. He would just be like gently rubbing his nose. And you'll never guess who sleeps that way now.
You do?
Yes, absolutely. So he would be gently rubbing his nose. And I can remember just being like a little fella, and I would climb up in his lap, and I would lay right here on him. And I remember the way he smelled. And to most people, and you always have these smells that create memories for you. Birthday cake or whatever it is. My father, because he was in an A van, he smelled like gasoline and fresh baked bread, because he was in a big metal box with bread, and he was sitting on top of this gasoline engine, and he would that was what he smelled like, and that was the most intoxicating smell in the world. Okay, it was peaceful, and it was like home. Home has a smell, right? It's one of the things that when I talk to my pastor about the church, say, if I'm traveling or something and I miss church, I always say I miss the smell of church, because you generally associate that smell with something wonderful in your life, and I definitely have that smell. And there's been a few times in my life that I've smelled it again, just from happenstance. You smell that, and you immediately go back to that minute in your life and what it was like, and there's no more nostalgic feeling. There's no more part of your brain that gets tickled than something like that. But yeah, it was peace. It was home. It was wonderful, and I loved it.
Yeah, I don't think that I had ever thought about how my dad smelled, but when you're saying that, like every time I gave my dad a hug, like he did have a very specific smell, and like he was pretty much a very clean person. Like he was, he might be in the shower twice a day or 3 times a day, depending on what he was doing or whatever. But he always had like a very clean smell, but it was unique.
Yeah.
And that was just it. Either that or he smelled like gunpowder residue, one or the other.
Dad wore Aqua Velva aftershave too. So it's another smell.
Was he like religious about it? Like, was that like,
no,
always Aqua Velva?
That was fancy. That was the fancy stuff.
My dad had found some kind of, it was called Chaz, Chaz. And It was like some really cheap stuff. And like every once in a while you'd find it in some shelf somewhere in some obscure store. And he always had that. And like that was the cologne that he would wear. And it was like, where the hell did you come up with this?
Yeah.
He's like, the
Yeah.
ladies love it. And I'm like, well, I guess somebody loves it.
Sure.
Maybe it wasn't
60% of
bad,
the
but it was
time.
just like, yeah, works every time.
That's right. No, I've just, I've got so many good memories and things like that I, we could not have a long enough podcast together for me to tell you about all the wonderful memories that I created or that were created with me, and my dad and my mom too. Because in a lot of ways, like I said, my mother took on some sort of paternal roles. And my father he took on some maternal roles. Whereas, my dad was helping me with school a lot. And my mother was a disciplinarian. And so they never, ever taught me to like, men do this thing, women do this thing. It's two people together trying to survive.
Yeah.
And it's who can do it, who has the capacity to do it and the ability to do it. And that's who's going to do it. So
I feel like that makes a really great family. It's like, that teamwork, it's not somebody else's job and somebody else has to do it. It's like, how can we do this together? We're kind of getting a little short on time, but I would love to see if maybe you wanted to share a favorite story about your dad, whether it's a story he told or it's just a story about him or you in general, but like, think of like something like you wanted to preserve for the ages. I don't want to make my podcast sound, that important, but like, is there just like some funny story or really great story, anything like that really is like, that's the one I've got to tell you about this? Are you pausing to really consider it, or is it one of those like, oh, all those are rated R? Because that's the problem I would have with my dad.
I don't know that any of them are. I don't know that any of them are rated R. Um, I'm just trying to think if I was going to put something in a time capsule about my dad, what would be the one thing? Man, that is so difficult
I'm glad
to
I put
do
you on the
because
ropes on this one. It's
there's
not
been
easy to stump
there's
you.
been so many, man. There's been so many things that um there's been so many things that the things that I've watched him go through. Um the man will, I mean, last week he had he had skin cancer, so he had like half of his face taken off. The man's had, like I said, this ear's been gutted, and he's had this ear they cut halfway off, and then they built more of his ear around his neck, or from skin around his neck. And there's no epitome of toughness. I mean, he is absolutely the toughest person, and he'll tell you it hurts. He'll tell you it hurts like hell, but it's not going to change anything if he tells you about it or if he carries on about it. And in that way, I'm not like him at all because I'm a big old baby. I'm not. Like, my tummy hurts. I'm looking. I need my mama. Um, so, I mean, that's more of an impression than an event than a singular thing. that I can say that I watched him do. Um, I, I hate to put it in something that's sad because I really don't want this to ever be perceived or misconstrued as something that is sad. But I will tell you about this because this was a moment that really my dad had made a decision, and that was it, like this was it. This was there's no more discussion. Like I told you, Dad had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he had been through you know rounds of chemo, where he was taking it every few weeks, taking massive amounts of chemo, wildly sick. Um, and in his early to mid 50s, so he's like 57,
Yeah.
right around when his brother died of leukemia at 58. His father died at 54, I think 54, 55. I never met him. I never met my grandfather. Um, they'd started putting him on chemo by mouth, and it was just like at that point it was just maintenance, trying to keep the cancer at bay, and he may always have to take chemo by mouth just to sort of stay level.
Gotcha.
And it made him so sick, made him so very, very, very sick. And in my house, all of the conversations happened around the kitchen table. I don't know about yours, but everything happens at the kitchen table. So we got around the kitchen table, and my father sat me down and my mother down, and he told me that he had made the decision to stop taking the chemo because of how sick it made him, and that it was not because he didn't love me. It wasn't because he didn't want to be around to watch me get married and have children of my own, or to it was nothing on that end. It was just that he couldn't live this way anymore. And then he went and told his doctor that. And the doctor said, "Hey, I've got a new treatment where we're mixing, it's ultimately a rheumatoid arthritis medicine with very low dose chemo, intravenous chemo." He had 8 or 9 treatments of that and has never been back. He's never been back to it. And since then, I mean, that was kind of the only real time that I can say that this was Dad's like big final decision. This is him controlling his own destiny, his own fate, in some ways, and not in it wasn't a bad thing, but it was a lot of it showed a lot of his character, and it was a very much of a soft underbelly to somebody was so tough and went through so much. And I watched him get beat by this awful disease for so long, and then this declaration And it was really him, again, being selfless. And it wasn't about him. It was never about him. And I don't know that the man has it in him at all to be anything else. He is certainly the most selfless person that I know, where he has genuine concern for other people and things like that. So that's it's not meant to be dark. I don't want to frame it as it's being dark, because that was a very hard moment, very hard. It's very emotional for all of us. But it was also like, this is a thing that, like, this is his entire character all boiled into one little event.
I don't
all
see
of
it
the
as dark
great
at
things
all
and stuff like that. But
I mean,
he came out the other side. If he hadn't have made that decision, I honestly think that his life would have been awful, because I mean, you and I know, if you don't go tell your doctor something, they just think no news is good news, right?
right.
You're going to stay doing what you're doing. If he hadn't have told his doctor that, he wouldn't have got on that other treatment, and maybe he'd be in a different position. Maybe he'd still be alive, or maybe he'd be miserable, or maybe he would have been dead 15 years. I don't know. But yeah, that instance, and then just other than that, some really. My father was the kind of guy that everybody loved. Everybody loved to be around him. Everybody always loved to be around him, and still do. Um, and people gravitate to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird that they do, but they do. They want to be around him because of just his spirit, his aura, whatever you call it, that he, it just comes out of him, that you're like, this is a guy you want to be around. This is a guy that you want to know, that you want to hang out with. So I had to deal with this my whole life. Like, every teacher I ever had, every coach I ever had, everybody was always friends with my dad. Everybody. They loved my father. And even like today, still, if I run into somebody that I knew as a child, that was my friend, the first question, how's Sam? How's your dad?
Wow.
That's the first question out of their mouth. They don't, not how are you? None of that. It's how is your dad? And because everybody loved him and still do. And they would yeah, that's another thing. Like, I don't know, that's like a singular event that happens quite frequently. People will send me messages on Facebook. Hey, I hope you're doing well. How's your dad? Just thanks, Dad. Dad's great. That's great.
Well, that really talks to his character and who he is. I mean, I think it's not a dark story at all. I mean, I think that's something that, everybody that's watching this, hopefully they can take a lot of deep, meaningful wisdom out of that. I could never say that my dad was ever that popular or ever that, considerate of other people's feelings. And not to say that he was bad, but I mean, he was just, he'd been through enough in his life that he wanted to do what he wanted to do, and that was it. And obviously he cared about the rest of the family, but he wouldn't have told me, this, that, or whatever else. He'd just be like, I'm going to do that. he was that guy. But for him to pull you into his decision-making process and say, give his explanation for it and really kind of set you at ease for doing it. I think that's amazing. I feel like if I were ever in that position, that's what I would want to do. If I was in his shoes, like I would want to do it just that way.
And I know that like you and your listeners, and then you've talked a whole lot about your family dynamic and everything that you've been through and what your experience was like with your father. And I to me, and I mean, it's not that I can't be empathetic at all with a lot of things. A lot of people have had a lot of some really hard upbringings.
Yeah.
And they've been through a lot emotionally and listen, I'm not going to say that there weren't fights or there weren't things like that, but as a whole, I'm pretty darn blessed with how all of that was in my life, and I'm probably quite different than other people that you've had on the show and that you've talked about before, because I had what I felt like was a really special childhood, and where I grew up with loving parents who were present and available to me and emotionally available and still are. I mean, good Lord, I was in Albany last week and I was on the phone with a client, and they had an earthquake, a 4.8 earthquake through New York and Baltimore and that area. And my mother is, text message after text message after text message. And then she starts calling because I haven't answered the text messages yet. Yeah. And I'm 40, but it doesn't matter.
No,
it doesn't matter. I could be 80. It wouldn't matter. I don't have the hellfire and like in the way that I was raised. My parents, my father loved his father as much as I love mine. My mother was, physically abused every day of her life. She was physically abused. And that was one of the things, like, she was not going to raise her hand against me because she was physically abused all the time. And it's different. It was a different kind of childhood, a different kind of raising, different fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it was bad. If I had to run it back and let's do it again, I'll do it again. It was great. And look at it as a whole. There were bumps in the road here and there, like I said, but it was awesome. I had a great childhood and upbringing, and I'm blessed every day that I get to have both my mother and father in my life. And I don't know how much longer that's going to be. Mom's been battling cancer for a couple of years, and we never know. We're not guaranteed tomorrow.
It's true.
But yeah, I would definitely do it again. So it's not like, this is not I wouldn't call this something that's so captivating. That's why it was strange, because you and I talked about saying things like this before. It was strange that you would have me on to the show, because I feel like, from a listener standpoint, if
which
if I
is
had
bizarre,
talked about,
by the way.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
if I
can't believe you listened to my show.
yeah, from a listener standpoint, I don't know that I would want to listen to somebody talk about how, oh yeah, everything was awesome. My dad's my best friend, and this and that and the other thing. When there are people who's like, oh, my dad used to put cigarettes out on my neck after he hit me with a Jack Daniels bottle a couple of times.
Wow.
That would that never. I was never scared. I was never worried that there would be anything like that. That was so foreign to me. It was as though that didn't exist. That was the kind of stuff that was in movies.
Right.
That was fiction. I didn't know it was really going on. To some of my friends. Some of my friends went through this. Like, they had awful parents. They had awful upbringings. But I just thought it was so strange that you would want me to come and share my experience with my parents and with my father, because I mean, he's so special to me. I just don't know that. I don't know that having the good on would be as as wonderful to watch as the having somebody who's had such a bad experience.
Well, I think from an
not.
educational standpoint, I think this is really great. I mean, whether it's bad, good, or mediocre, I've always respected you ever since I met you. Intimidated by you in some ways, and because you've got like that really intense look. But all kidding aside, I think you've done incredibly well for yourself. I mean, just incredible. I'm just continue to be impressed by you all the time, and that's a no BS compliment. Like,
Well, I appreciate that.
There's no second meaning behind all that, but I love your story because it's truthful and it's honest, and you're very thankful that you put it out there. But for somebody who maybe hasn't started their family yet, or maybe they're just curious as to how they want to be a better father, or maybe just some stories and perspectives on how to be a good father, it's great to hear like your parents started later. You didn't have the most traditional childhood. You didn't have the baby talk. You had all these different things, but at the same time, your dad wasn't afraid to, jump into the mix and help you at school, where some guys are like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a woman's job, or whatever. And the fact that like you would enjoy sleeping on top of your father, to me, like that sounds more like I slept on top of my mother. My mother was my comfort. To hear that your dad was your comfort,
Yeah.
I mean, it just kind of makes me tear up a little bit, because I miss my father so much, and I had a lot of comfort in him. And so I think people can take a lot away from your story, education wise, of like, even in these weird circumstances, even in whatever situation you might find yourself in, you have an opportunity to be a better person, and it can turn out really, really well. I would think that your dad is really proud of you, no matter what happened.
I hope so. So there's a little bit of philosophy in this, right? I talked about this earlier, that when my father was teaching me to bowl, And that was sort of a microcosm of the way that he was teaching me to live.
Yeah.
And he would not, he wouldn't, he never taught me how to do anything by intimidating me or making me afraid of him, or I didn't do anything in spite of him. Oh, I had a coach one time who would scream and yell at all of the players and ultimately like challenge their character, and they would feel as though they had something to overcome, and that was how they perceived success. I'll show that guy,
Yeah.
because I'll be the best that I can. I am not motivated that way, and I can't like it. Like I've shut down when somebody starts something like that. Right? I'm not motivated that way. I wasn't raised that way. It was the opposite. It was totally the opposite. It was, let somebody tell you you can't do it. Right? You absolutely can do it. You can do anything that you want to do. No, you're whatever you're willing to put the time and effort into. You're willing. You're going to be great at it. I was set toward success instead of against failure. And some people work really well when they're fighting against like the worst possible outcome. Like, if I don't do this, I'm going to be fired, so that I'm the best employee in the world. And then other people, it's, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. And that's what builds them up. And that is, that's part of what you do in your job now. And that's part of what I used to do and what I still do in some ways in my job now. But you have to know what tickles people, like what's their motivation, what motivates them, what moves them.
And, where do they thrive? It's almost like they're a plant, like I've got a snake plant at my office now, which apparently is a succulent, and hopefully if I'm wrong, then nobody beats me too bad.
Do you have to hit it with a stick? Man, I don't know what to do with a snake. Like, get it out of the yard? Throw a stick at it so it goes away?
It's kind of curvy and shaped, and it kind of goes straight up. I don't know, but
that's some kind of Alaskan mumbo jumbo, man.
No,
I don't know what that is.
But apparently it's a desert plant, and so kind of like what you were saying, as far as
Alaska's a desert, right? Isn't Alaska a desert?
Sure. But like a coach yelling at somebody, this is just the way that kids need to be trained. I'm just going to yell at you and yell at you and yell at you, and it's going to work. Like the thing I learned with this snake plant and succulents in general is like they can die if you overwater them even slightly. So if you apply the same principle that you've applied to every other plant that you've had in your house, you're going to kill it. So, really the parenting thing is like find out who your kids are and learn what they need to grow and nurture that, as opposed to taking the one size fits all, beat them with a stick or whatever else it is. Really get to know, and kind of going back to leadership and business, but it's the same thing with your employees. What does that person need? Kind of being able to identify like how are they going to grow as a person? How are they going to grow as an employee? It's, what is it? The love languages, like acts of service, physical touch, that type of stuff. I'm kind of an acts of service and physical touch.
Words of affirmation, and there's like 7 love languages.
Yeah. I think I only remember the ones I am.
Gifts, acts of kindness, words of affirmation, physical touch.
Yep.
I don't know. There's some more. My wife can tell you all of them.
I like doing things for people.
She's got the books and things.
I'm a toucher, like I'm rubbing Conan's head. I'm tasseling his hair. I'm
Yeah.
just, I'm like one of those touchy feely kind of people. Cause it's like, I'm not going to sit here and expound how much I love you. I'm just going to grab you and like, hey,
we're huggers, and it's and it's very, very common. And this is another thing. Like this is a dad thing. I tell people that I love them.
Yeah.
On a frequent basis. I have told you that I've loved you and that I love you. Like when we're going to leave and not be together around each other for a while, and I've made that kind of a habit. That's another dad thing. Like that's something that he would do. He would tell people that he loved them, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing to do, and to tell them that how you feel about them, and that you care about how well they're doing in life, and that you actually do want to know their story, and share in their successes, and sort of help them out of failures and different things like that. I mean, my father was a father to lots of people too. And that's one of the reasons that all of my friends that I see from time to time
how's Sam doing?
Ask about him. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, they do. They 100% ask about him. But
if you keep talking, we're going to find more truth here.
it's okay.
It's all worth it.
Yeah. No, there's lots to have though. Like he's great. He's wonderful. And yeah, I'm a hugger. I'm definitely a hugger. Always have been. And
yeah, I feel like it communicates so much more than, hey, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's, it exists for a reason,
that's right.
It's there, it's one of those things like whenever somebody's sad, it's like you want to go give them a hug, or maybe they want a hug from you. It's one of those things. It's something very basic and powerful within us.
And something like with me, and again, like another thing that surprised me that you would have me on is I don't have kids of my own. And it's some of that is that I wasn't married, wasn't in a position where I could have kids, really. I get late starts on everything.
I do.
Feeling. Like my mom and dad getting a late start on having me was sort of just set the course for my entire life.
Yep.
I didn't do anything on the right schedule. I have people that I graduated high school with, their kids are graduating college.
Yeah.
And here I am, and we're talking about, are we too old? Are we gonna, try to get some help in some way, and, some sort of, science/miracle situation? Are we gonna try to adopt? And how long will that take? But
I've got a friend of mine who I can't tell you who she is, but she recently shared some news with me that after so many years of her trying this, that, and everything else over and over and over again, it seemed like she was ready to give up. She's pregnant now. And I was so happy for her. I'm
wonderful.
Still happy for her. I'm like, wow, this is so
That's
cool.
wonderful.
So, I mean, in the back of my mind, whenever you're talking about kids or just dad stuff in general, I'm like, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I would love it. And it doesn't matter if it's natural or if it's adopted. You're going to be an amazing dad.
If we were pregnant tomorrow, when that child was born, I would be 41 and my wife would be 40. So if we were pregnant tomorrow, I know that there is a time that ticks away, that where your body just quits being able to do it naturally. But my wife's dad was in his 40s when his youngest was born, and my grandmother she was one of 10 or 12 kids or something like that. Like there was a whole bunch of them. Man he had a family, like, then he was a widower and had another family, like well, 5 and 5 or 5 and 7, like had a whole bunch of them. Like had basically 2 lives and continued to have kids. And when he was making kids when he was 50.
Now that I do the math, I think that we had Conan whenever I was 40 and Julie was 39. We're like 10 months apart, but we were at that point. And
yeah, I mean, so I don't know that it's not in the cards. I don't know that it's not in the cards. I think that at my age now, I have a much deeper appreciation for my father, for the way I was raised, and I see it in perspective a little bit differently than I did then. Always appreciated it. Don't get me wrong. But I think that the moment that I'm able to be a father, I will have yet another appreciation for everything that they went through, all of the things that they did, every sacrifice they made, everything that was given to me, that where I was put first. And I think I'll have yet another level of appreciation, so that will just continue to stack and stack and stack. And really the only thing that will really stink is if they're not around when something actually does happen. If they're not able to be around when we do have a child or adopt or whatever it is, that will be, I'll be infinitely sad about that, because like I said, I knew one of my I knew one grandfather, and I knew both of my grandmothers. My grandfather passed away when I was 16. My one grandmother passed away when I was 20, 19, 20, and another one. I was in my 20s when she passed away, but she was very old, 90-ish at that point. She was very old.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that would be something to regret. Really, it'd be that. But I've got a cousin who was adopted, and then showed up on an ancestry test, right, and reached out to us. It was wonderful, wonderful thing. I actually thought that because we had to do the math on it, I thought it could be a sister. Thought she could be my sister, and for just like this much time. And she's considerably older. Like my parents wouldn't have even been together. Right. My father would have been like 18, 19 years old when she was born. My parents didn't know each other.
Yeah.
So for just like a little bit, I thought that I was gonna have a sister, but she was adopted by older parents who I think were maybe even in their 50s. She had a great life, and it wasn't until she was in her 50s that she decided to really go down the exploration of finding out anything about her birth parents. And I'm really, me and my mother and father are the only ones who know that she's in the family. She has siblings who don't know anything, like they don't know anything about her. We're really the only ones who know, and that she has no interest at all in making some sort of connection or something to her siblings. And she reached out to us, and we just sort of hit it off because she's awesome. She's great. I like her as much as I like anybody in the family. So more maybe even, and she's great. She's a really great person. And yeah, just for a minute, I thought maybe that I might have a sister for a second, but she was adopted, had a wonderful life, and her brother too, a different family, adopted 2 kids. Not so it wasn't her. It's not her biological brother, but it is her brother that she was raised with. Anyway, that's the. So it's going to happen one way or another. I'm planning on it, or bound and determined to make it happen. And
yeah,
I just hope my dad's around to see it.
Yeah,
I think that it's some sort of weird kind of cultish thing for parents to see other parents struggle with their kids. Like, you got to change another diaper.
I think it's a bonding thing.
I think some of you guys are just trying to get people in the club. It's like, this is how I think HOAs got started. I really do. I really do. Because there's nothing more evil in the world than a damn HOA.
I was going to say evil and HOA in some kind of sentence.
Yeah. So this is how it got started. People got together and be like, "You didn't cut your grass this week, did you?" And you guys, all you parents, are like, "Yeah, you didn't get any sleep last night, did you?" Nope, you didn't get any sleep last night. Oh, yeah, and your kid broke what? Oh, but that's going to be really expensive.
My dad was
needs a new size of shoes, right? Oh yeah. You just bought 7s. Now you got to buy an 8. Skip 7.5. Got to buy an 8. Kids' toes are sticking through the shoes. And it's only been a month since you bought those. That kind of thing. I know. That's what you guys are doing.
My dad used to. I think it's a common bonding kind of thing. It's almost like, I went through it, so you've got to go through it now. That kind of deal. It's almost like hazing or something like that. Why do we do this? It's tradition. To get in the club, you gotta go through this pain and suffering. Like my dad would tell me, like he peed in your face one time, didn't he? Hasn't he? He's like, yeah. It's like, you've stepped on one of his toys in the middle of the night. Yeah. Well, you know exactly how I used to feel whenever, it was you on whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're right.
Hot Wheels and Micro Machines, man.
Oh, he was still telling me about the jacks and the ball, like the little spikes with the whatever. And he's like, I would find these things all over the place.
Those were purposely made to jab into the foot.
Yeah, I
And
mean they're
Lego
caltrops.
bricks are that way too, right? Lego
Yeah,
bricks are exactly like, why are they sharp? Why are
yeah,
Lego bricks sharp?
yeah. Why does the Hot
So the,
Wheel car have like all these spiky points on it?
mm-hmm.
It's like this is Sauron's Camaro Z28. You know, it's got spikes and stuff, and it's like I can't even get it out of my foot. It's
Yep,
stuck in there.
yep. This is Fury Road.
Yep.
No, I all kidding aside, my boss Thomas um said that he felt as though like his life wasn't complete until he became a father.
Totally
Like he
agree
had
with
just
it.
been sort of floating along on the breeze until he became a father, um and I don't know. I'll just have to see. I don't have perspective on that. Perhaps
I feel like it's a
and
purpose like that is unfulfilled in a man's life if you don't have kids in some way. You know, whether you have them or whether you're helping somebody else out with their kids, there's something spiritually fulfilling about it, and just it's just kind of fun. It's almost like with my son and my daughter, it's like I don't know what it is. You know, it's like being able to simultaneously complain about how you had it
mm,
versus, you know, what's going on now, and also trying to make things a little bit easier while you're complaining. It's like you're stupid. You know, back in the day, you know, I was trying to learn guitar, you know, I didn't have YouTube, I didn't have tuners, and I had this little pitch pipe and I'm blowing on it trying to tune my strings and they go out of tune. It's like now you've got all this stuff that tells you exactly what to do. You just got to be a monkey
right.
and do it. And it's like, it's pretty cool.
Well, I'm not one for sage advice. Um, and you might want to cut this out, but I give
All right. This
so
is going to be good.
my nephew. My nephew I don't know, he's 22 or something. Big, tall, good looking kid, right? Um, he when I give him advice, it is snort it, don't smoke it. Like that's it, thumbs up from there. So snort it, don't smoke it, and don't get any more stupid tattoos. Like that's what I tell him. That's the advice that I give him. So I don't know if that's fatherly or not, but it is definitely, yeah.
Just that
I think
last part
that's
about don't get any more stupid tattoos is kind of
Oh yeah, he's
telling.
covered. He's covered. He's covered it. So he's got one right here, right? Like on he's got a big muscled up dude, right? Like a
Yep.
young guys get. Well, he's got it's like it's a note or a letter or part of a letter, something that his grandmother wrote to him,
Mm-hmm.
and she spelled some things incorrectly. She had some misspellings in there, and he left them in there. It's done in her handwriting and everything. He left all of that in there, so he has literally misspelled tattoos, and he's from Tennessee, and misspelled tattoos. And then he shows up to Christmas, and he's got like ivy going down his arm and onto his hand.
Stop it. You're embarrassing your state.
What do you have? What is this? I'm all for it, man. If somebody if you do a thing, if a thing happens in your life, like I survived this thing, or
Right.
I was in the military, or I was something, and you want to get a thing to honor or remember, and like every time I look right here, I know that I did this thing. I conquered this. Get a tattoo that says "cancer sucks." Like if my father came back with a tattoo that says something like that, he earned it. My
Right.
mother
Yeah.
too. Um, so those kinds of things, like I get them, but it's just ivy. and it's like it's on your hand instead. Like you've got it all down your hand, and it at that point it's just like just art.
I feel like
And
my dad gave me some advice about tattoos and don't don't put anything on your skin that you're not going to want to see for the rest of your life. And it's like you're not going to want to like back in the day, like I was in Boy Scouts, I'd carve like the Autobot symbol into like this folding
mm-hmm.
chair I made, and it's like, can I imagine if I got the Autobot symbol put on my body like when I was a teenager in high school and thought it was cool? I would regret it. I'd regret it
Man,
more.
I like to change my iPhone wallpaper too much. I
Oh
change
yeah.
my iPhone wallpaper all the time. Like
Yeah.
I would want a different one. I'd be like, that's cool. And then Kara and I, when we were in Hawaii, we got like they're not henna tattoos. They're whatever their little ink is there.
Like the stain
But
type of thing that washes off after a while.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so you get it and it's raised up, and then you wash it off, and then like 2 weeks later, as layers of your skin come off, it starts to come off. Well, it was all fun and games when we were in Hawaii, and like I've got a tattoo down my arm here. And then as soon as I got back to Tennessee, I'm like in the bathroom, like with the scrub brush, scrubbing this thing off. Like I want this gone now.
Was
Like I
that the
think
night
I'm.
that you guys went to karaoke?
Yeah, we got it during the day. We got it during the day, and
Somehow
then
I feel like we talked about like the whole Mike Tyson tattoo thing. That I'm glad that you didn't get one of those.
yeah. So actually, like we wound up with two temporary ones. One of them was just literally ink. Like it was just like a little like a band, like a little tribal band or whatever. But by the time that it was done, I realized then like yeah, I missed the boat on getting them, and also I don't know that I missed anything. Like I think I was totally okay not getting them, and I just that's the only sort of way sage wise advice that I can give my that I can give my nephew other than some tips on how to effectively use hydrogen peroxide. So, um, I don't. He's grown. He's grown. He's not a little kid or anything like that. He's grown. Grown man, and it's a different thing with him. So, and he's got a dad, and he's got a great dad, and a great mom, and I don't need to like step in and be anything else to them. So, him or his sister. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's just
I think that bears saying is that you can have, and I'm not saying anything about your nephew, but just in general, and this is something I'm hearing my wife talking in the background. Well, just because you have good parents doesn't mean that your kids are going to be good, and it's true, and it doesn't mean that if you have bad parents that you don't have good kids or whatever. You never can tell what the good Lord's going to bless
it's
your
true.
kids with as far as who they are and temperament and in person. But I think it's always something that we should strive forward towards being, providing that for them,
Yeah,
whether it goes to good use or not.
you can be the president of the PTA and be involved in your kid's school and your kid's life and give them all the opportunities in the world, and they can just give you one of these and bolt, and it's or get a weird drug habit or something like that, and it's of it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you did that. You didn't do anything wrong. A
Although I
person
feel like
chose
if
their
you're
own
that
path.
uptight of a person that you're kind of asking your kids to rebel against it, I feel like you kind of you need to have that kind of balance of like you're smart and you do things the right way, but you can also be stupid and still have fun
Mm-hmm.
with it. And, you know, like I wouldn't say that you're playing both sides of the fence, but you know, you can flex and move back and forth. That way your kids think you're fun enough to be able to do stuff with, but at the same time, they still respect you and like the knowledge that you're giving them. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
really
you
bad advice, but it sounds good
no,
to me.
no. If there's something that like this is something that is real, um, and that if there's like a piece of advice that somebody with no kids who has no right at all to give anybody advice who has kids, if I can give somebody some advice on how to handle your kids, make an environment where they're not afraid to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
And and if I did something dumb, or if I uh, had some sort of weird thought or a weird thing that went through my head, or an idea, I never felt uncomfortable talking to my parents about that, about anything, um, anything that went on, any good or bad. Um, but if you smother them and you shower them in success and things like that, I get completely what you're talking about. Like you could make an environment where if you do nothing but tell everybody how perfect your children are, and then your kid starts vaping or smoking cigarettes or something like that behind the school bus in the morning, they're not exactly going to be in a rush to tell you about it if they get busted doing it, or to seek out help or advice, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Because you've just been told how perfect you are every
Well,
day of your life.
and sometimes I think kids will gravitate towards those types of things because it's like I'm rebelling against them or they don't like it and I don't like them. Therefore, this equals good. You know, like me growing up, like my dad would, you want some beer? We're like, yeah, I'll take a drink. And I'd be like, I don't like this, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and, you
My
know,
my
I've
mother
never,
always told me if I wanted to get drunk right
right.
here at
Yeah.
this house.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to
We'll
get
get you
drunk, you
drunk.
want to do something stupid, yeah, right here.
Yeah. And then it's like
Because
afterwards when you're puking in the toilet, I told you.
yep, yep, and that's the way. That was the way that it like that was
Take
the
all the
way she
fun out of
made.
it.
Yeah, it was it was also it was definitely a like I never did do that, but it was just her way of saying, without using so many words, I know you're going to be stupid. I know you're going to do something dumb.
You've been
And you're
exposed
going
to
to,
women. You're going to be
that's
stupid.
right. That's right. That's right. My father, same thing. Like, you're going to do something dumb.
Yep.
And if you are going to do it, I would prefer you to be open and honest with me about that you did it than for you to lie and you to come up
Or
with
worse
something like that.
things, you know, do something dangerous or
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole other thing. And man, there's just there's not too much parenting or anything like that you can say would have stopped somebody from having an addiction, or from falling into depression or whatever. whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like you just, that's another one of those roll of the dice about, what kid are you going to have? You can mold them and shape them into being somebody, and maybe that takes, maybe it doesn't, but end of the day, it's what are you what are you proud of? What are you ashamed of? Like don't do anything you're ashamed of as a parent. I don't I don't know that my folks would be able to say that they did anything that they would have been ashamed of as a parent. No matter how it turned out. My mother to this day tells me that she wouldn't have cared if I'd have wound up doing anything. I used to clean bathrooms. If I'd have just stayed cleaning bathrooms, that would have been totally fine with her.
You would have become
She
the
didn't need
master
me
of
to
the
be
custodial
anybody.
arts.
Yep. Yeah, she would have been fine with me doing anything. Wouldn't have mattered. And that's addictions or whatever people get into. I mean, you don't love your kids just the same.
Yeah.
But it isn't something that you can say, you blame the way that they were raised for their behavior as an adult or whatever, their decision making as an adult. We never know what's going on in their minds.
Well, speaking of behaviors as an adult, I know it's late for you and it's getting late for me.
Yeah, it's late for me.
Well,
but it's just, I'm absolutely, completely honored, humbled that you would have me on, and to be able to share a little bit of my story, and hopefully we can, it's a reflection not just of me, but maybe somebody somewhere is going to have a kid, and they can take a little bit of this and say, well, I really liked that somebody said about that, and just like all of the things that you always say, and how many episodes of this show, things that you would have done differently, things that you feel you could have done better, worse, whatever. It isn't about trying to go back and relive them, redo them, or fix them. It's maybe about just sharing the experience. And I'm so grateful that you would have me on, or bring me on to talk about my dad. And I just love him so much that it's a real honor to be able to talk to him or about him for a couple of hours.
Well, I'm extremely thankful that you were on, and I've learned so much about you and your dad. And I feel like there's a lot of wisdom to have. And, I'm a late bloomer too. A lot of times I'll just keep digesting information over a long period of time. So I'm sure this is going to be in my head for quite a while. So, just thank you so much for being on the show. Hopefully, I'll be praying for you, because I have been praying for you. That maybe we'll have Travis Jr. in the picture sometime soon, the next year or so. And if so, have you on the show and see what see how your thought processes might have changed.
I'm hoping it's not Travis Jr. I'm hoping that it's a little Sam. That's my dad's name.
Little Sam.
I'm hoping it's
okay.
a little Sam. So, that's what I can have that conversation with Kara another time, but, that would be what I would really like. Yeah. And yes, I would intend to name my son after my father.
And then everybody's going to ask about Sam, and you'd be like, which one?
Well, so another thing with my dad, and then I'll leave you with that, is you always know where somebody knows my father from, whether they call him Sam or Sammy. Because my father was Sammy until he was in his 20s. So, most of those people are now in their 80s who would have known him as Sammy. But when I was younger, people would always ask me about Sammy. Well, I knew that they knew him from the bowling center days, or from, like a younger version, like before he was married.
Right.
And then if they asked about Sam, they knew him from time after that. So yeah, it's always, here's how you identify how somebody knows my father. So yeah, like that would be, maybe it would be Sammy um, instead of Sam. Maybe my son would be Sammy. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Never know.
Well, I'm hoping for the best. Well, Travis, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time and the late night conversation. And thank you to everybody watching. If you've made it this long, you are the real MVPs of the show. We love you. We thank you so much for watching, and hope to catch you on the next one. Take care.